yato vibhuti yatam jusate andhi. So we are continuing our reading from first canto, chapter 18, text 19 to 20.
It is now ascertained that he, the personality of Godhead, is unlimited and there is none equal to him. Consequently, no one can speak of him adequately. Great demigods cannot obtain the favor of the goddess of fortune, even by prayers. But this very goddess renders service unto the Lord, although he is unwilling to have such service. So I really appreciated this point that none of us are really capable or, speaking him adequately. Whatever we are speaking is just, it's, if Ananta with thousands of heads cannot glorify Krishna, then what is our capacity really to glorify Krishna?
And before glorifying him, I guess we are not capable of even understanding him, even a tiny bit actually. Whatever understanding we get, it's only by his mercy. So I guess what this verse tells me that I can never be proud of my learning about the Supreme, because it can happen that when we learn about the Supreme, then we start feeling supreme ourselves.
I like that.
Yeah.
When we start learning about the Supreme, we start feeling supreme ourselves. I like that a lot. Maybe can we read? Prabhupada is talking about how Lord Brahma was created by Lord Vishnu from his lotus stem and not in the womb of the goddess of fortune, who was sitting right there at his lotus feet. And so that means that there is complete independence and complete perfection as far as the Supreme Lord is concerned. So, text 21.
Athapi yat padanakhavasishtam jagat viranchopahita pahitaranambha sesham punati anyatamo mukundat kunamaloke bhagavat padartha.
Who can be worthy of the name of the Supreme Lord but the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna? Brahmaji collected the water emanating from the nails of his feet in order to award it to Lord Shiva as a worshipful welcome. This very water is purifying the whole universe, including Lord Shiva.
So I guess this is saying that how it establishes the supreme position in the last two verses of Krishna as the supreme, and how everybody is actually looking for the favor of Krishna, including Lakshmi ji herself. And here, the water from the feet of the Lord is so powerful that even Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, they hanker for even a drop of that water, and that's why Ganges is so worshipped, and everybody wants to go to the Ganges to take a dip, because that water is emanating from Krishna's lotus feet. So similarly, the Bhagavad Gita is emanating from Krishna's mouth. So it has even its same potency of purifying us. The Bhagavatam is emanating from the mouth of his devotees. So that is also of the same transcendental quality. So anything in touch with Krishna or his devotees is completely out of this world. And it can actually, that's the only thing that can actually purify anybody.
I was just thinking that just like when we go to the temple and we take this water, the Charnamrit, and we put it on our head, the same way Lord Shiva has the Charnamrit of Krishna, Lord Vamanadev, on his head. And it's and Prabhupada is actually making this point here that how, there are all these personalities, and sometimes we are not sure of the position of all these different personalities. So like, who's Lord Brahma? So Lord Brahma is just another living entity. He's not just another living entity. He's a very powerful living entity, but he's still a living entity, Jiva Tattva. Lord Shiva, Prabhupada is talking about how he is an in-between person, that he is not a living entity, but he's also not Vishnu Tattva, right? So he is in his own unique category. And so when we understand, the position and understand how they're all, ultimately they're all emanations or different expansions of Krishna, but with different potencies. So the Jiva is also an expansion of Krishna, but they are a separated expansion of Krishna. And the Vishnu Tattvas are integrated expansions of Krishna. And Shiva is their own distinct category. So like that, there's so much for us to understand. And when we read these purports by Prabhupada, then we will have a better understanding of how all these great personalities, who they are.
And I guess it's interesting, Prabhupada is making this point that how these four sampradayas, they come from, one sampradaya comes from Brahma, another comes from Lord Shiva, another comes from Shri Lakshmi. right? So all these, this head of these three sampradayas are also glorified in these two verses. Lakshmi Devi was glorified in the previous verse, and Brahma and Shiva are glorified here.
Nice.
In this verse.
Wow.
So there's an intimate connection between all these living entities under Krishna's arrangement to propagate this knowledge. And it's like a Ganges. This knowledge is like a Ganges coming from Krishna to Brahma, Brahma to Vyasa, Vyasa to Madhvacharya. And this is a Ganges that that we are taking advantage of.
And I guess the you know, a very important point, a very, very important aspect of our ability to do that is to first receive this knowledge on our head, which means, what does it mean to receive knowledge on our head? That we bow down our head and we become humble as this knowledge is, you know, it appears. Also realizing that how Lord Shiva says that I cannot really handle the force of this Ganga, you know, so, you know, like when Ganga falls, right? So it first falls, you know, Lord Shiva takes it upon his head. So that in the same way, we can also receive this knowledge on our head. And the second is to transmit this knowledge being completely true to the particular lineage and to the particular chain of teachers. And that is a very big responsibility, that, you know, when we are repeating these words, we are really repeating the words that we have read, you know, in Prabhupada's books, because that is coming through a distinct chain, and each chain has its own nuances. And so when we learn something, we like I think some of you, I think Bhuvaneshwari, for example, she has a background in Hindustani, in Carnatic music. So even within the realm of Hindustani music or Carnatic music, there are different houses or different schools. And within each school, there are certain nuances, you know. And so when we learn, you know, like how, you know, for example, our school is Brahma, Madhava, Gaudiya, Sampradaya. And within that, there are so many nuances. So our ability to transmit is directly dependent on our ability to receive the nuances and look at the nuances and be able to repeat them as it is without deviating.
That's very important, because spiritual knowledge is so subtle that sometimes you may feel that, okay, I learned this here, and then I learned something over there, I learned something over there, and we start mixing all these concepts together. It can create like a great misunderstanding in our own hearts. It may appear like it is okay, but just like a virus, we can't see the virus, right? The coronavirus, but when it enters our body, it creates havoc. So when this knowledge, which is not coming from the sampradaya, which is not coming from the proper source, it may appear that it's very enchanting. It seems like true. It's so nice, amazing. It may have that form, but actually it's very detrimental. It may be detrimental to our spiritual life. So I guess the safest path is to always stick to the sampradaya. That's why Prabhupada is repeating this. Stick to the sampradaya, which is coming from the chain of these teachers. And in our case, we stick to the words of Srila Prabhupada when we are repeating, and that way we stay safe in our spiritual life. Yatra anurakta sa seva dhira vyapoya dehadishu sangamudham prajanti tat param hamsayamantyam yashmin ahimso pasama sadharmaha.
Self-controlled persons who are attached to the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachment, including the gross and subtle body, and go away to attain the highest perfection of the renounced order of life, by which non-violence and renunciation are consequential. So self-controlled people who are attached can all of a sudden give up the world of material attachment and go away to attain the highest perfection of the renounced order of life, by which non-violence and renunciation are consequential. Can we read what Prabhupada is saying in this?
Yeah.
Only the self-controlled can gradually be attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Self-control means not indulging in sense enjoyment more than is necessary. And those who are not self-controlled are given over to sense enjoyment. Dry philosophical speculation is a subtle sense enjoyment of the mind.
Wow.
That was a nectar. That was a piece of nugget of gem right there. Dry philosophical speculation is a subtle sense enjoyment of the mind. Sense enjoyment leads one to the path of darkness. Those who are self-controlled can make progress on the path of liberation from the conditional life of material existence. The Vedas therefore enjoin that one should not go on the path of darkness, but should make a progressive path towards the path of light or liberation.
So just want to make a point, this philosophical speculation in practical life, it may come like that when we read about something, then our mind starts spitting out its own interpretation of it. Oh, I think like this. Prabhupada said that there is no room for our thinking, or I guess this is what it is like this, because that is all a creation of our own mind. But we have to train the mind to think what the great acharyas are thinking. So when we follow in their footsteps and train the mind not to think on its own, because spiritual truths are already ascertained by these great acharyas. There's nothing for us to invent or discover. We can have realizations based on our understanding of that. So that is a philosophical speculation when we start using our mind to mix things up or bring things from here and there.
So Prabhupada here is talking about how the Hamsas, the Paramhansa stage is a stage where the swans only accept the milk out of a mixture of milk and water. So similarly, those who accept the service of the Lord instead of Maya's service are called Paramhansas.
And the quality of Paramhansas Prabhupada mentions is freedom from envy. He says real non-violence means freedom from envy.
This is such a novel idea, right? That generally when we think of ahimsa, we simply think of like, okay, you're not killing anyone. But Prabhupada, in another purport, he talks about real non-violence. Or real violence means not helping people, come in contact with this knowledge of Krishna, not awakening their spiritual life. That is violence. And here Prabhupada is saying that real non-violence means freedom from envy. And if you remember the beginning of Bhagavatam, we read that how this Bhagavatam is meant for the Nirmatsaranam Satam, which means people who are completely not envious. So what does that mean? It means that violence is not helping people connect with Krishna. Real non-violence means freedom from envy. And Bhagavatam can be understood by people who are, completely free from that envy. So that means that non-violence means, and what is the freedom from envy? It's to be able to distribute this knowledge.
Yeah, freedom from envy is treating every living entity as our own, as our part and parcel of Krishna. That is a platform of non-envy. Because envy, we sometimes think envy only causes violence to others, but the greatest violence that envy causes is to ourselves. We keep burning in this fire of envy, and this is what propagates our existence in this material world. We create our next life by this envy in this material world. Prabhupada makes some wonderful statements here.
Let's read this.
Real renunciation means perfect dependence on God. Very interesting. Usually renunciation means you give up something because this is material, you want to be detached from matter, so you give away everything. But that's not real renunciation. That is only partial renunciation. Perfect dependence on God. Every living being is dependent on someone else because he's so made. Actually, everyone is dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Lord. But when one forgets his relationship with the Lord, he becomes dependent on the conditions of material nature. Renunciation means renouncing one's dependence on the conditions of material nature and thus becoming completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord.
I love this section.
Wow.
I really love this section because it's saying about how, because this is something that, we all can become, we can all fall within this trap. I know that I have gone through this, like, renunciation can just sort of feel like, okay, I don't care, right? It doesn't matter. Or that sometimes it may also manifest as just coldness, callousness. But actually, this is more difficult.
This is more difficult.
That I care, but I'm going to depend on Krishna.
Because it's very hard to depend on somebody. As a living entity, we have this desire to be free. I don't want to be dependent on anybody. I want to assert my, even like a 2-year-old child, when you ask the child to go there and sit this, no, I will do whatever I want to do. Because that is coming from our desire to be independent. But we have to understand that our real nature is to be always dependent. Although the independence is there because Krishna is also fully independent, and being a part of Krishna, we also have that minute free desire to be independent. But balancing that, we also have a desire to be completely dependent on Krishna.
We don't have a choice.
We don't have a choice. We are made that way.
We are made that way. And you're so right, that nobody wants to be dependent. We balk at it. Like, oh my God, now do I have to? But that's the reality. And so, and Krishna, of course, is the supreme reliable. So just because we are creepers, and creeper means that it always needs like something to, depend on, to rest on. And then we've been looking for that resting place and we don't find it. And so, to recognize the fact that, we are completely dependent, because I was thinking that there are two sides of the same coin. To say that, I want to enjoy matter, right? I want to enjoy matter as much as possible, and then get frustrated and say, I don't care about matter. It's like sort of walking away. But in between that is this dependence on Krishna, that I can't enjoy matter. What do I do then? Right? I can't control matter. What do I do? My instinct is like, okay, I'm just going to say this is all false and I have nothing to do with it. I'm just going to walk away. But the more difficult thing is to say, well, I do care. Right? I mean, I'm just simply dependent. I'm just helpless.
And I guess that is the real freedom, because Prabhupada says real independence means complete faith in the mercy of the Lord without dependence on the conditions of matter. We think that just by thinking I am free, we are not free. We are always dependent on the conditions of matter. So that's the real independence. There was something else, but anyways, I lost my train of thought.
I like that.
Aham hi prishtaryamano bhavadbhe achakshatmavagamo atra yavan navapatantyatma samam patatrinat tatha samam vishnu gatim vipashitaha.
O rishis who are as powerfully pure as the sun, I shall try to describe to you the transcendental pastimes of Vishnu as far as my knowledge is concerned. As the birds fly in the sky as far as their capacity allows, so do the learned devotees describe the Lord as far as their realization allows.
Beautiful verse.
I love this, metaphor, this imagery.
Namapatanti atmasamam patatrinas.
Yeah, the birds can fly in the sky as far as the capacity will allow. So same way, we can only glorify Krishna as far as our realization will allow us.
Because the sky is unlimited. How even if the bird flew, the planes fly 33,000, the satellites go even higher than that, but still then it's nothing.
It's nothing. And this is actually another place where we can then cultivate some humility. That, whatever we know or whatever we think we may know is just such a drop, not even a drop.
Not even a drop.
It's not even a drop. It's unlimited. And so we can then, put our head down and say, yes, Krishna. And then we from that place of humility, then we can actually really learn the art of glorifying Krishna.
Oh, my thought came back.
Yeah.
I was saying that the real dependence means more than depending on Krishna is depending on Krishna's devotees. That's where the real rubber meets the road. Because we can think that, oh, I'm dependent on Krishna, I don't need devotees. As soon as we start thinking I don't need devotees, or I don't need dependent on devotees, then we actually we don't get even depend on Krishna at all.
Actually, I was on that same note, I was just thinking that the test of our bhakti and the test of all that we talk about actually happens when we get corrected. And I think Vaisheshika Prabhu says it so nicely. He says, I live to be corrected. So dependence means so many different things. Like, for example, how much, like when I think of dependence, I always think of a dog. Right? Completely dependent, and he just waits and waits when the master will come home. If the master chastises, he doesn't just go away.
It doesn't keep that. Like a dog never remembers a chastisement. There is no grudge. Okay, you corrected me yesterday, and then
you're no longer my master. Yeah, you're no longer my master. So the fact is that we use the word Prabhu. Prabhu means that you are my master. And so, but do we really, this word is now, it's almost like it's kind of lost its, like it's just a placeholder. Like, just like we say Mr., we just say Prabhu, but actually it has a deep meaning, which means that I see myself as your servant. And what does that mean? That means, and the Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that, all of us, we are like dogs of our spiritual master. And so when we talk about this idea of becoming dependent, then we have to look, bhakti means practical. It's not theoretical. So practical means that whenever we are encountering all these different points in our life, we can look at it and say, what is my response? That's where we will know what our bhakti barometer is, or what our bhakti index is. What is my response? How do I respond to provocation? How do I respond to neglect? How do I respond to correction? How do I respond to somebody taking away my glorification or my praise? Like all these different ways in which we'll be able to say, oh, this is my bhakti index. And this is where one can actually, as one continues to grow, one will see that, your realizations will become deeper. Right? Okay. Should we, till 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ekata dhanuruddamya vicharan mrigayam vane mrigananugata shanta kshudita strishito bhrisham Jalashayam achakshana pravishesha tamashamam tadarsha munimasinam shantam militalocanam.
Once upon a time, Maharaj Parikshit, while engaged in hunting in the forest with bow and arrows, became extremely fatigued, hungry and thirsty while following the stags. While searching for a reservoir of water, he entered the hermitage of the well-known Shamika Rishi and saw the sage sitting silently with closed eyes. I love this purport. Can we just read this a little bit?
Yeah.
I love this. This is such a nice purport. The Supreme Lord is so kind to his pure devotees that in proper time, he calls such devotees up to him and thus creates an auspicious circumstance for the devotee. Maharaj Parikshit was a pure devotee of the Lord, and there was no reason for him to become extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty, because a devotee of the Lord never becomes perturbed by such bodily demands. But by the desire of the Lord, even such a devotee can become apparently fatigued and thirsty. Just to create a situation favorable for his renunciation of worldly activities, one has to give up all attachment for worldly relations before one is able to go back to Godhead. And thus, when a devotee is too much absorbed in worldly affairs, the Lord creates a situation to cause indifference. The Supreme Lord never forgets his pure devotee, even though he may be engaged in so-called worldly affairs. Sometimes he creates an awkward situation and the devotee becomes obliged to renounce all worldly affairs. The devotee can understand by the signal of the Lord, but others take it to be unfavorable and frustrating. So nice, huh? That, we see that, and we'll see this actually throughout Bhagavatam, how so many great devotees, they will apparently go through some very embarrassing circumstances.
Yeah.
And you're like, if I went through that embarrassing situation, I would want this to be put in a book that's going to last thousands of years.
People are going to read about my embarrassment.
My embarrassment, my confusion, my complete,
My misbehavior.
Yeah, my, bewilderment, right? But the reason is because, in that bewilderment, there is Krishna's very special hand to actually finally, and I think I heard once Vaisheshika Prabhu make this point, and it was like, it actually shook my ground a little bit. He said, there will be this final blast, right? And in that one final blast, one will be, sort of, that'll kind of yank you out of this material world. I'm paraphrasing him. He said, it'll yank you out of this material world and thrust, it'll kind of throw you. So there is this kind of final push. And you can see that in the Bhagavatam, that for Maharaj Parikshit, it was, this curse.
Yeah.
It's scary, huh?
It's scary. And I guess just want to clarify that when we see that this great, how one can ask this question that Maharaj Parikshit was a great devotee, and why was he hunting in the forest? And so Maharaj Parikshit, although he was a devotee, but he was a Kshatriya, that was his dharma, to protect the citizens. And Prabhupada explains in many places that the Kshatriyas used to go out in the forest to practice their ability to shoot bow and like arrows and on these animals. And especially these animals who were shot by Maharaj Parikshit, they would get a very high destination because they were came in touch with this great devotee.
Should we pause here?
Yeah, we can pause here.
Yeah, let's pause here.
Because this is a new section now.
Yeah, new section. So we'll pause here and take your comments and reflections. Yes, Bhaktilata, go ahead.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, very nice discussion. I really like this this point that you were discussing about dependence, and then the other side, like you said, just leave and go, like kind of indifference. So I really like that, the dependence means it's a sign of love, right? Like, because opposite of love is indifference. And then when we say we all are looking for a reciprocation with Krishna. So and reciprocate Krishna also on his devotees. So when we declare that dependence, then we are establishing that channel for reciprocation, then not becoming indifferent and turning away.
Very nice.
Very nice point.
Nice
so
point.
Dependence is a channel of love.
I like that. Maybe that can be our tagline.
Dependence is a channel of love.
Dependence is a channel of love. And I was also thinking when you were speaking, Bhaktilata, that, in that dependence, there is also that room that how, even though I'm looking towards, Krishna and his devotees for love, how that love is going to manifest, how Krishna's mercy is going to manifest is something that's where the acceptance comes. Because sometimes what happens is that we want to control that channel of love, and we want that love and that mercy to manifest in a certain way. We want our teachers to give us a certain grade, and if they don't give us that certain grade, or if Krishna doesn't acknowledge us in a certain way, then we get all riled up that this is not fair or this is not right or whatever. But how that mercy is going to manifest, that is where, because mercy will come in unusual ways, unexpected ways.
Krishna's mercy is always surprising. You have to be, and it shows that Krishna is is unlimited, right? Because he can send the mercy in unexpected, unlimited ways.
Bhaktitirth Maharaj actually had a very beautiful poem on that.
Mm.
He talks about how I'm thinking the mercy is going to come on my right, but Krishna, your mercy is coming on my left. Now, what do I do with that mercy, right? So the fact is that there is mercy. And sometimes the mercy may be, in a rose, sometimes it may be in a thunderbolt. And our response to the thunderbolt, if it is the same as it's our response to a rose, that's what endears us to Krishna, and that's what endears us to his devotees also.
The main thing is that Krishna is interested in us. And as long as he's always interested in us, but we don't think, especially when we get Krishna's interest, and that's good enough.
Yeah. Shringar, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Very nice
Hare
discussion. How many good points, especially how do we respond to provocation that gives our bhakti barometer. I think that's always nice to mind.
Yeah.
So I really like that point. Also have a question. Like Prabhupada always discourages philosophical speculation. But then in chapter 14th of Bhagavad Gita, in Modes of Material Nature, in the first purport, he says that one who applies philosophical speculation can achieve devotional service, specifically for that chapter. So could you elaborate on that?
Nice question.
Yeah. Philosophical speculation, when applied correctly, it means asking the questions. Like when we don't understand something, like Prabhupada says, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I am the taste of water. So Prabhupada says, this is a place where we can apply our philosophical speculation, understanding how Krishna is the taste of water. Philosophical speculation doesn't mean that we come up with our own conclusions, but we use our talent and abilities, whatever we have, in expanding whatever is already said by Krishna and the Acharyas. And it's still aligned with the same conclusion, but we are finding newer and newer ways to understand it, glorify it, expand it. That's a proper application of philosophical speculation.
Also, philosophical speculation is different from mental speculation.
Yeah.
Mental speculation is discouraged, or in fact, we should not even go there. But philosophical speculation is simply, taking up, it's actually the chewing process of this knowledge. So Burijan Prabhu talks about this, that, hearing. So when we are hearing all of this, that's one level of hearing. What do we do? Like I eat something. Eating is just one part of the process. After eating comes chewing. After chewing comes digestion and assimilation, right? So in the same way, philosophical speculation is like, okay, I heard this. Now, what does it mean? How do I understand it? What does it really mean that Krishna is a taste of water? What is my experience of it? And then we start ruminating on it. And that kind of rumination, that kind of chewing and assimilation is very much required.
And it's within the guardrails that are provided by the acharyas. So it's not like a free license to just fly off in the sky and just come up with anything that we like. But it's always under the guardrails.
It's always within the guardrails. Yeah.
Whatever we think is it under the guardrails of the Shastra and the acharyas. Then that is encouraged, because that it allows our bhakti to discover newer dimensions about Krishna.
And also, as we do that, another thing I was thinking about is to always check in.
Always
check. Confirm.
Like
our own understanding, and this is something that this is our own personal, I guess, realization or our own personal practice, that even after so many years of trying to study Prabhupada's books and practicing Krishna consciousness, we still feel when we come up with some thought, there is always that quality of being vulnerable. I always like to check in and say, this is what I'm understanding.
Is that correct?
Is that understanding correct? Or am I missing something in this? Or is there something more to it? So having that mindset allows us to really understand the nuances of bhakti in a much deeper way. And we'll be surprised by how much there is. Like whenever we even take a statement of Prabhupada says this in one place, but then there is something else being said in some other place. How do I reconcile it? That's one level. But then there's another level. How did Prabhupada apply that? Right? And how do I apply it in my current situation? So and that's, I think, what keeps bhakti so interesting and so constantly keeps you on the edge, because you never really feel that I got it. And that's natural. If Krishna is unlimited, bhakti is unlimited. If Krishna is independent, bhakti is independent. So how on earth can we ever claim to understand? If we can't claim to understand Krishna, we surely cannot claim to understand Bhakti. She is his unlimited potency. I don't know. We kind of took your question by Shringar and kind of went on a different, perhaps, trajectory. But did you have anything more to say, or?
No. I think, yeah, you explained it quite nicely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
There's one more point that came to my mind. Like in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that Lord Chaitanya's mercy, we should apply our intelligence to understand how Lord Chaitanya's mercy is manifesting in this world. And that will satisfy our desire for, our mind has a desire to speculate, right? So we can satisfy our desire to like speculate by really deeply meditating on how Krishna's mercy is spreading in this world, how we can spread Krishna's mercy, coming up with creative ways to spread Krishna's mercy. We can utilize that speculative.
On that note, yesterday we were flying, we were on a plane, and there was this person who was sitting next to us, and he all of us, we started talking, and he said, I have so much interest in the Bhagavad Gita, this, that, whatever. And then he said, I've always had this desire that, we should have these tiny little, like, visiting cards kind of a box where we put the, the cards, the verses of the Bhagavad Gita in English and in Sanskrit. And we should distribute that.
He said that, like, the Bhagavad Gita itself is big. So when you give it to somebody, they may not have the inclination to read it right away, or they may just put it away. But if you have a box of visiting cards, and the cards are stacked vertically, so like a person will randomly, he was saying that and he has friends in Christianity, and then they share these cards, and it's very exciting because every day a person picks out a new card and there is a beautiful message about Christ or whatever, and it inspires that person. And then the person's faith increases. So he was very inspired by that, and he was sharing the same idea that maybe perhaps we could do that with the Bhagavad Gita, and I really like that idea. That
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I had a point to make.
Yes, Eric.
So as at some point in the discussion, the issue came up about having the kind of dependence and devotion that a dog has to its master. And that got me thinking, we talk about people as being dog people and cat people. And I'm wondering, if you can have dog bhakti, then is it also possible to have cat bhakti? And cat bhakti would be where, how cats are, that they kind of like to pretend that they're independent and they do their own thing. But at the end of the day, you understand that, unless they walk out of your house and never come back, that they are dependent on you and that they do love you in their own way. And, in my life, I've had mostly cats as pets. Well, I mean, pretty much only cats and not dogs. And so, I consider myself, just based on that fact, more of a cat person. And so, what would Krishna's attitude be towards cat people, versus dog, or, cat bhakti versus dog bhakti?
I love that, Eric.
Beautiful analogy.
Yeah, actually, Krishna allows. This is actually Krishna's quality is so enchanting. He's Bhavagrahi Janardana, which means that he accepts the essence. And so whatever it is that we're presenting, but when you were speaking, I was also a cat person growing up. And this is actually, they were my constant, the only source of, like, I didn't have any playmates and I used to just play with cats all day long. But one thing about cats that really, really struck me that can be completely applied to the path of bhakti, which is that at one point we had too many cats. And my grandparents, I lived at my grandparents' house. They weren't so happy. There were just cats all around. So they said, okay, we're going to leave some of there was one cat in particular who used to really make this very annoying sound. It was kind of disruptive. So they wanted to leave this cat like far away, like I think it was 25, 30 kilometers, maybe even more, in a gas station. And they just went and they dropped the cat there, and the cat just kind of, and these were, by the way, not like domestic, like they were not cats that were like in America, you kind of, that's different. These were just cats that roam around the house. They were not like, So then this cat was dropped off like far distance, but this cat still found its way back home.
Hmm.
And every time they would go drop the cat somewhere, the cat would still find its way back home, So, so the point is that that's us, I guess, that, no matter if we know where home is, then we can always find, and we'll always be drawn back, to Krishna. And I think your point about, like wanting to go do one's own thing, but knowing within the heart that ultimately, I'm dependent on Krishna, that's fine, and
Krishna recognizes that this is our conditioned nature.
Yeah.
Our conditioned nature is like to be a cat. We like to pretend that we are independent, but then we also need that dependence.
Yeah.
And then I guess as we progress more and more in bhakti, then our bhakti becomes more like dog bhakti from cat bhakti.
Yeah. Cat bhakti to talk, but the cat bhakti is good too.
Yeah, cat bhakti.
Cat bhakti is very good. It is the, we practice bhakti.
Uni, do you have any thoughts?
Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, Vidarbha, as you were describing the experience of that cat, it reminded me of this song I learned when I was in school about the cat came back the very next day. I don't know if you know that song.
No.
But there would be like some adventure, some effort made by the owner to make their cat go far away. And then the refrain of the song, and I'm sure that my American colleagues can vouch for this, it was the cat came back the very next day. He just couldn't stay away. I don't know. You have to look up that song.
I am going to do that because that was such a hilarious thing growing up, and it was very fascinating. It's like, wow. And this is exactly our process in bhakti, right?
Maybe our today's tagline can be the cat came back the very next day.
Yeah.
Amritwani, can you change the
Yeah, can you
tagline?
change? Because the thing is that we also, I can tell you, all of us here in this chat room, we've all tried to go away. Or, Maya has pulled us, or Maya has taken us and thrown off in some gas station. But we see that sooner or later, over the years, people just come back. So.
Thank you for sharing that. The cat came back the very next day. Anybody else would like to share anything?
All right, you guys.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Radhika, go ahead.
You mentioned that that a devotee, when he comes to Krishna, he starts feeling like a Supreme Lord.
Right? The Supreme, not Supreme Lord, Supreme.
Supreme. I guess by acquiring knowledge of the Supreme, we start feeling Supreme.
Yeah.
But that's a neophyte stage, right? Like initially.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you come with the purpose of becoming, you're understanding God. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This is just an aberration, right? You come in and you're like, oh, okay, I got this. Now I'm like,
Yeah, the opulence that comes with bhakti, that's one of the initial stages. It causes that bewilderment that, okay, now I got it.
Okay, yeah, got it. Yeah, thank you.
And then you come to a point and you realize, oh my goodness. So anyways, thank you so much.